There is a moment that happens after someone leaves. Not the moment they walk out. Not the moment the door closes, or the message goes unanswered, or the call stops coming. A different moment. A quieter one. It happens 3 weeks later, or 3 months later, when you are doing something completely ordinary. You are making tea. You are sitting in traffic. You are staring at a ceiling at 2 in the morning when the rest of the world is asleep. And in that moment, without warning, without invitation, they are there. Not physically, but present in a way that feels almost more real than physical. Their voice, the specific way they laughed, something they said once that you did not know you had memorized until it played back perfectly in your mind. And you sit with that moment, and you ask yourself the question that nobody around you can answer. Why can I not let this go? Why does this person still live so completely inside me when they are no longer here? If you are watching this right now, and you know exactly what that moment feels like, I need you to stay with me. Because what I'm about to tell you is not what the internet usually says about heartbreak. It is not about moving on quickly, or filling the space with distraction, or convincing yourself you are better off. It is something deeper and more honest than that. Something that touches the actual architecture of what happened between you and this person. And once you understand it, the way you carry this experience will never be the same. There is a reason they will not leave your mind, and it is not weakness, it is not obsession, it is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is actually a sign of something profoundly right. The human heart does not release what it recognizes as genuinely significant. And what happened between you and this person was significant. Your nervous system knows it, even when your rational mind is trying to argue you out of it. Your body remembers closeness it was not ready to lose. Your mind circles back not because you are broken, but because something real and unfinished lives in that space between where things were and where they ended. And unfinished things do not go quietly. They stay. They wait. They surface at 2 in the morning when you are staring at a ceiling and the rest of the world has no idea what you are carrying. So let us talk about what actually happened. Not the surface version, not the timeline of events or the last conversation or the text that never came. The deeper version. The one that lives underneath all of that. When 2 people create a genuine emotional bond, something changes in both of them at a neurological level. The brain begins to map the other person into its architecture of safety. Their presence becomes associated with regulation, with calm, with the particular feeling of being known. The brain is extraordinarily efficient at this. It does not need years to build this mapping. It can happen in weeks, sometimes in a single conversation that goes somewhere neither person expected. And once that mapping exists, once another person has been built into your internal sense of safety and belonging, the absence of them does not feel like a social inconvenience. It feels like a structural loss, like something has been removed from the foundation. This is why heartbreak is not metaphorical pain. It is physical. Brain imaging studies show that the same neural pathways activated by physical pain are activated by social rejection and loss. When someone you were genuinely bonded to disappears from your life, your brain processes it with the same circuitry it uses to process being burned or injured. The grief you feel is not dramatic. It is not disproportionate. It is a direct and accurate biological response to something that mattered. The only people who do not understand the depth of what you are carrying are the people who have never allowed themselves to be truly reached by another person. You allowed it. That takes a specific kind of courage that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Now here is the part that changes everything if you are willing to sit with it. The person who pulled away from you, who created distance, who went quiet or cold, or simply stopped showing up the way they once did, that person did not leave because you were not enough. I know that is what the silence has been telling you. Silence is a brutal narrator. It fills itself with every insecurity you have ever carried and presents them to you as evidence. It says you were too much, or not enough, or wrong in some fundamental way that you cannot identify, but must be true, because why else would they go? And you listen to that narration because silence is loud in a way that nothing else is. And because the alternative, the truth, is more complicated and in some ways harder to hold. The truth is that people who pull away from love, real love that reached them in places they were not prepared to be reached, do so because of what they found inside themselves when you arrived, not because of what they found in you. When someone who has been carrying old pain, old fear, old stories about what they deserve or what they are capable of, or whether they can be trusted to stay without causing damage, when that person encounters something genuine, something that asks them to be present and open and accountable to another heart, a terror rises in them that has nothing to do with you. It has to do with every version of themselves that was hurt before, every time they opened and were left, every time they trusted and were proven wrong, every time they stayed and it cost them something they could not recover easily. You did not cause that fear. You simply became the place where it finally showed its full face. And that is an enormous thing to carry. To be the person whose love was real enough to surface someone else's deepest wounds. To be the one who reached through the wall and felt them flinch and then watched them rebuild it faster and higher than before. To have been close enough to matter, and then to have that closeness used as the very reason for the distance that followed. That is a specific kind of pain that most people cannot articulate because it does not fit the simple narrative of rejection. You were not rejected because you were not wanted. You were retreated from because you were wanted in a way that felt unmanageable to someone who had not yet learned how to want things safely. Let me tell you what is happening inside the person you cannot stop thinking about, because this is the part the competitor script you may have watched before got partially right, but never went deep enough into. They are not at peace. Whatever their silence looks like from your side, whatever the stillness of their absence feels like to you as you navigate days without them in it, their interior world is not quiet. It is loud with you. It replays conversations. It notices things in ordinary moments, a song, a particular quality of afternoon light, the way someone in a crowd laughs, that pull them back to something specific about you. They minimize these moments when they occur. They redirect their attention. They tell themselves a version of the story that makes the distance feel necessary and rational. But the heart is not rational, and it does not accept narratives it knows to be incomplete. So the moments keep coming, and each one costs them something they are not admitting even to themselves. They think about what they said in that last conversation, and whether they said it well, or whether they said it in a way that did not represent what they actually meant. They wonder if you are okay. Not in an abstract way, in a specific, detailed way that visits them at unexpected moments and sits there longer than they want it to. They have already imagined reaching out 100 times, composed messages they never sent, started to call and stopped, told themselves it would be better for you and for them to maintain the distance, and then spent the next hour arguing with themselves about whether that was true or whether it was just the easier choice disguised as a noble one. This is not a person who has moved forward cleanly. This is a person who is living with the weight of an unresolved thing, carrying it privately, managing it imperfectly, and telling everyone around them that they are fine, while something in them that knows you knows better. But here is what I need to say to you directly now. And I need you to hear it, not as comfort, but as truth. Understanding why they pulled away does not mean you should wait for them to return. Understanding the psychology of their withdrawal does not transform their absence into presence. Knowing that their distance is fear-based does not make it hurt less or make the empty space in your days smaller. And more importantly, it does not change what you deserve. You deserve someone who chooses you with their full self, not someone who loves you in pieces, not someone who holds you in their private thoughts while keeping you outside the door of their actual life. Not someone whose care for you exists entirely in silence and retrospect, while you sit with the daily reality of their gone. The hardest truth about being loved by someone who is not yet ready to love is that their feelings are real, and their presence is absent, and both of those things are simultaneously true. And you cannot live inside someone else's feelings. You can only live inside your own life. And your life, the actual daily texture of it, the mornings and the meals and the ordinary moments that make up a real existence, needs to be built around people who show up for it. Not people who love you from a safe distance. Not people who would choose you in theory, but cannot manage to choose you in practice. This is where the grief gets complicated. Because you are not just grieving the loss of a person, you are grieving the loss of a version of the future you had already begun to imagine. The brain is extraordinarily good at building futures. Once it identifies something as significant and safe, it begins automatically constructing forward projections. Conversations you would have had, places you would have gone together, versions of yourself you might have become inside that particular closeness. And when the relationship ends or stalls or goes quiet, you are not just losing the present, you are losing an entire imagined architecture of what might have been. And that is a grief most people around you will not understand because they cannot see what you are mourning. They see only what existed. You are mourning what could have. Allow yourself to mourn it. Do not rush this. Do not perform recovery for the people around you who are uncomfortable with how long you are taking. The timeline of genuine emotional processing has nothing to do with other people's comfort levels. It has to do with the specific depth of what you experienced and the specific architecture of what you are dismantling. Some bonds take months to process, not because you are failing to heal, but because the bond itself was real enough to require that kind of time and attention. But while you allow yourself to mourn, I want you to begin doing something simultaneously. I want you to start paying attention to yourself in a way you perhaps stopped doing when this person was in your life. Because one of the quiet costs of loving someone who needed you to be smaller, or more patient, or less needing, is that you often begin to shrink yourself in ways you do not fully notice until they are gone, and you look at yourself and realize you have been waiting a very long time for permission to simply be entirely what you are. You were not too much. Whatever story their withdrawal wrote on your self-perception, whatever conclusion the silence invited you to draw about your own value or your own lovability, that story is not true. The intensity of your feeling was not the problem. The clarity of your caring was not the problem. The fact that you showed up completely and wanted them to do the same was not asking for too much. It was asking for the minimum that love actually requires to survive. And if that minimum felt like too much to them, that is information about where they are in their own journey. It is not a verdict on yours. Here is what I know about people who have been through what you are going through right now. They come out of it changed in specific ways. Not better in the simple, inspirational sense that gets written on social media. Changed in the way that real experience changes a person. More able to recognize what genuine connection feels like because they have felt it. More able to identify its absence in future relationships because they know the difference now. More aware of their own depth because they discovered it in the process of loving someone who could not fully receive it. And more, not less, capable of the kind of love that lasts. Because the love that lasts is not the love that never gets tested. It is the love that gets tested completely and teaches the person carrying it something true about their own capacity. You are not diminished by this experience. You are educated by it in the most expensive way possible. And that education, as painful as the tuition has been, belongs to you now. It goes with you. It makes you someone who knows things about love that people who have never been truly reached by another person and truly lost them do not know. That knowing is not consolation. It is not a trade worth making. But it is real. And it matters. The person in your thoughts is carrying something that is theirs to carry. Their unhealed places, their fear, their inability to meet you in the fullness of what you are offering. That is their work, not yours. You cannot do it for them. You cannot love them into readiness. You cannot be patient enough, or understanding enough, or available enough to substitute for the internal work that only they can choose to do. And waiting for them to do it while your own life moves forward without you fully in it is a cost that is too high. It is a tax on your present that pays interest on a future that may never arrive. So here is what I want to leave you with. Not a resolution. Not a neat ending with a bow on it. Because that is not how this actually feels, and pretending otherwise would be a disservice to everything you are carrying right now. What I want to leave you with is this. The love you have inside you, the specific quality of caring that you brought to this person, the depth of presence you were willing to offer, that does not go to waste. It does not disappear because they could not hold it. It does not diminish because they chose distance. It lives in you. It is part of your emotional vocabulary now. And the next person who receives it, the person who is actually ready to receive it, who has done enough of their own work to stand in the full weight of being genuinely loved without flinching and retreating, that person is going to be changed by it in ways that last. You are not at the end of your story. You are in the most painful chapter of it. And painful chapters are not the same as final ones. They are the ones that determine the character of everything that comes after. They are the ones that strip away the parts of you that were not serving you anyway. The parts that were willing to accept pieces of love when you deserved the whole thing. The parts that confused intensity of feeling with security of presence. The parts that waited and wondered and minimized their own needs in the hope that someone else would eventually decide they were worth showing up for fully. You are worth showing up for fully. Not eventually. Not when they are ready. Not if conditions align and fear subsides and timing improves. Now, as you are. In the middle of this grief with everything unresolved and nothing certain, and the ceiling at 2 a.m. still doing its worst. You are worth a love that does not require you to wonder. A love that does not live primarily in silence and private thought and imagined futures. A love that exists in the actual texture of daily life, in the ordinary moments, in the showing up without being asked, and the staying without needing to be convinced. That love exists. It is not a fantasy constructed from longing. It is real, and it is possible, and it is what you are actually available for now that you know what you know. The experience you are moving through is not evidence that love is too dangerous or too painful or not worth the cost of what it extracts. It is evidence that you are someone capable of the kind of loving that changes people. And that capacity is the most valuable thing you can bring into what comes next. Breathe. Not because everything is fine, but because you are still here, still feeling, still capable of caring this deeply in a world that frequently rewards numbness. That is not nothing. That is everything. And it belongs entirely to you. If someone in your life is carrying this quietly, and has been for longer than anyone around them realizes, share this with them. Not as advice, as company. Because the loneliest part of this kind of grief is the feeling that nobody around you understands the specific weight of what you are holding. Let them know they are not alone in it. And if this reached something in you that needed to be reached, stay close to this channel. Because this is the only thing we do here. The truth about love told without shortcuts, without false comfort, and without asking you to be anywhere other than exactly where you are.